Today we are going to talk about 3 ways data malpractice can ruin a hospital. We have all seen of doctors, primary care physicians, or others use EMR system, electronic medical record systems. Long gone are the days of paper being stored in a file cabinet and hard to retrieve that information. But with that abundance of data that is now available for hospitals comes a challenge: how to use that data effectively. Of course, we believe our premise here is that it is always better to root decision making in data than to go by simple intuition, which means that hospitals have to find effective ways to create reports and dashboards, but also have their users at all levels of the organization embrace that data, use it on a day-to-day basis. So therefore, create and foster a data culture. And this is being done to various degrees by hospitals across the nation today. But data can be quite challenging to harness. And today we are going to talk about 3 subtle ways, 3 challenges that uh, tend to go unnoticed, or if noticed, accepted as just par for the course, and end up hurting hospitals in the long run, and sometimes even in the short run. Those 3 ways are data being untimely, being untrusted, and being unused. So let's tackle the first one of these. When data is untimely, insight that comes too late is often useless. And decision making has to be timely, and therefore the data to support decision making has to be timely. Unfortunately, that data that a CFO might need to decide on an investment or a decision about the workforce or other hospital expansion project may not be readily available, or just data that will show us where we might not be capturing revenue where we are supposed to, or getting reimbursed to the tune of what our contracts actually stipulate. All of that needs to be brought up in a timely fashion. Now, why is it not timely? There are a number of factors that come into play. But first, let's take a couple of steps back, because data in itself at a raw level is not usable. It is as oil. Raw oil is not usable. You have to process and refine it to make it usable. In the same way, raw data needs to be processed, needs to be presented, and some of the quality issues around the data need to be addressed before you can effectively make sense of what is in that data. And there are certain skill sets required for knowing how to retrieve data effectively, knowing what the data model behind the electronic medical record system is doing, or the ERP system, how all of that data is structured so that the right information, the right data elements can be retrieved and presented adequately. So there is usually only a few people in the organizations who have that knowledge and that skill set to do this effectively. And they usually are found on the reporting team, and there are other names for it, the analytics team, or different ways to describe that team. But basically, it ends up being the burden of a single team to produce reports for the organization. And that team, savvy as they might be, as skilled as they might be, are inundated with requests of various kinds. And they seek to prioritize the work. They find ways to do it effectively, but usually end up having a backlog. And that backlog turns them into the bottleneck to insight. Instead of being the facilitators, the catalysts to insight being promulgated throughout the organization, they end up being the bottleneck, paradoxically. That is one of the reasons why data can come too late. The right insight can come too late. And sadly, users, when they are looking for information, also cannot find that information. If we think of the journey that a user takes when there is a business question at hand, they might first wonder, is there even a report to address this question? Is there one that already exists? And oftentimes it's hard to find out if one already exists. And guess what? They will turn to the reporting team to say, does such and such exist? Do we have a report? Do we have anything that talks about admitted patients who have such and such conditions? And then, of course, that reporting team who was already tasked with creating reports will interrupt their work and search for the right report and then present it, only to see another question come back. Well, is this doing such and such in the way that I expected? What is it actually doing? What's the logic behind this? Because all of that is not always clearly transparent, more questions go. And you see where this is going. The same team that is trying to present information to the organization is getting also not distracted, but being asked to also explain what that information is, explain what is contained in those reports, clarify what looks odd, and therefore their workload just skyrockets. And no wonder this creates a BI backlog. Now, this is not the time to delve into how that is solved, but the point of this is that all of this culminates in data being untimely. And this is something that people may accept because it's just how things work. You present a report request and you have to wait weeks, perhaps months, before you can get the answer. Therefore, people are conditioned to wait or find alternative routes to figure out the question at hand. You might not have the opportunity to wait. So you create an opportunity for what might be labeled shadow analytics teams to form, where various teams who are not on that centralized reporting team, teams that are capable of analyzing data or tap into data of various sort, will put information together. But there is a risk. That risk is that that information may not be vetted, may not be as validated as the reporting team may have gone through the pain of verifying, validating, and matching and making sure that it is trusted data. So this leads us to the second problem, when data is not trusted. Untrusted data does as much harm as untimely data. Untrusted data is often the trigger for what we call multiple versions of the truth. And the scenario is simple. You have a very basic question that an executive may ask. How many patients did we see last month? And there comes multiple answers. Well, the question might be refined. How many patients did we see in our clinics? Or how many patients were in a bed, in an inpatient status? But even when the question is refined and more specific, you may still end up with various answers because hospitals have multiple sources. A lot of hospitals have acquired other hospitals. Therefore, data exists in multiple databases. And sometimes you have to compile information from multiple sources. Even if all the data was in a single source, the filters that are applied to retrieve that data, whether it is based on the date range, the service area, or even the type of coverage the patients had, could vary and therefore change the answer. So this leads to, sadly, a lot of debates. And is this number right? Is that number right? Can we trust this one? Can we not trust this one? That too can be the object of a different whole conversation on how to get out of that vicious cycle. But the point here is that when you cannot trust the data, it is of no use. And with data governance efforts being run in various hospital settings, people have attempted various ways to solidify and clarify what constitutes the right definition of a particular measure, what is the right standard for counting certain things. And that helps clarify the definitions. But think about the user's journey again. A user looking at a report needs to know what is that officially defined measure definition that is being used in this report. How do I connect the dots? Yes, I realize the definition exists, but is that definition what is being used in the report I have in front of me? There has to be some way to connect the two so that I have confidence that I am using what I'm supposed to use. So there is an opportunity to basically clarify for users what they are seeing. Now, you can imagine when data is untimely, when data is untrusted, it's not surprising that data gets unused. I want to delve a little bit about this unused aspect because there are at least two groups of reasons. The first is just that people have become disillusioned about the accuracy of the data, the trustworthiness of data, and therefore throw up their hands and say, oh, I cannot trust this, so let me just figure it out on my own. That's one reason. The other reason is just they don't know that the report exists. It is not visible to them. It is not what is called discoverable. So something already exists, but I don't have access to it. And because of data security reasons, most business intelligence tools or reporting tools make sure that only folks who already have access actually can see the report. And that's normal. But the drawback is that someone who legitimately should have had access but doesn't yet cannot even know that it exists. Therefore, that report is not as used as it could have been. And guess what? This takes us back to the first problem, because this user will then issue a new request, a redundant request for something that already exists. And that request is going to go to the central BI team, whose backlog will just increase by another layer of working on redundant requests or variations on a theme for things that may already exist. Now, these are, as you can see, related issues. Untimely data leads to untrusted data, leads to unused data, which then circles back to untimely data. And when you have this vicious cycle, you realize, well, this is not just an isolated problem. This is a systemic problem. And for systemic problems, we need systematic solutions. We develop the layered approach to address these various issues in our live class on data backlog, and we invite you to join us for those conversations and explore how you can tackle these different facets with the simple concept of addressing the people aspect, the technology aspect, the planning aspect, having a platform where users can easily search and find the report they need and use them. It's as simple as that. Search the report you need. When you find one, you can verify that it is doing what is expected, and then just use it. If you don't have access, make a request, but then once the access is granted, you use it. So we invite you to join us for those classes, BI Backlog Begun, that we hold on the third Thursday of every month. Thank you.